Welcome to another episode of The Inquisitive Analyst. I'm your host, Marcus Udikang. It's the show where we chat about business analysis and project management and the challenges and triumphs within those fields. It's inspiring, it's informative, but very much inquisitive. My guest today is a project manager, an award-winning blogger, and an author of several books about project and change management. She runs a website called A Girl's Guide to Project Management. She is also a fellow of the Association for Project Management, known as APM. And her latest book is Engaging Stakeholders on Projects, How to Harness People Power. It's also been published by APM. So please help me welcome to today's show, joining us all the way from the UK, Elizabeth Harrin. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for having me on the show, Marcus.
You're very much welcome. And I'm very much glad to have you on the show.
It's going to be good.
Excellent. Fantastic. Now, inquiring minds want to know, how did you, because you're very prolific on the internet, how did you initially get started in project management?
Well, that takes us back a good 20 years, because I was one of those people who made a choice early on to join project management. So I know many of your listeners will have perhaps come to project management later in their career accidentally or through choice as a second career. But I went to university, I did an English literature degree, and I had zero idea really of what corporate world was like. And I was lucky enough to join American Express and take part in their graduate training scheme, which showed me lots of different parts of their business. And one of the teams I got placed in was called business re-engineering. And suddenly this light bulb went off that was, there is a job where I can tick things off. I can make lists. I can tell people what to do. And, and it really felt like it was a career I could embrace and a job that I didn't even know existed. So once I realized that project management was a thing and that I felt like it was quite a natural fit for the skills that I already had, because I'm quite an organized person, I just didn't know how to best apply that. And also I love the variety. So the fact that as a project manager, I could work across lots of different disciplines appealed to me more than, say, joining the HR team and becoming an HR functional manager for the next however many years. So I realized that project management was available to me, and I sought out jobs in it from there on, really. So I did start my project management life as a young person joining the workforce.
Fantastic. Yeah, because most of the PMs that I worked with, in fact, I'd have to say there's very few exceptions. Most of them grew into the role after working in the weeds, so to speak, or working in the trenches. And they were either a business analyst or maybe a developer or maybe a technical writer. And they gradually moved their way into a project management manager role. So that's...
Yes, I think that's a very common way of doing it. And in a way, that gives you a deeper business knowledge than I've ever had, because I've never had to have a functional job, if you know what I mean. My functional job has always been the project management specialist, although my very first job title was business change analyst.
Oh, okay.
So that was what we were called in that sort of project management and IT function.
Oh, fantastic. Now, I'm curious, for many of the project managers out there, maybe you can give us an idea of what type of value we can get from your website, A Girl's Guide to PM, and also your Facebook page called Project Management Café. What can we glean from all that?
Okay, quite a lot. I mean, I've been blogging now for 15 or so years, and there's over 1,000 articles on there, interviews with people, book reviews, software reviews, and also how-to guides on how to do project management on the website. So if you go to girlsguidetopm.com, all of that is there. The easiest thing to do is just search for the search term that you want, and hopefully some relevant articles will pop up. But I think what makes it different is that I try and write from the perspective of the practitioner. So while there's 100 different articles about how to run meetings, I can share my experiences of having done it. And my whole ethos around project management is bringing a real life approach to it, because many of the people listening and watching the show will have done project management training courses. And my experience has been, while I have nothing against training courses, and I even teach training courses myself, they don't always give you the skills that you need to do the job in real life. and I'm sure that goes for business analysts as well, develop the kind of training that we are expected to do to enhance our professional credentials doesn't always naturally translate to the environments that we find ourselves in. So the blog tries to take a really realistic approach to the real life of having to do all the things. And Project Management Café, which is our Facebook group, is just a really nice community of people. People post their questions and everybody weighs in and just gives them advice on how they're doing it. So you can use the wisdom of the crowd really to try to help get unstuck.
I like that, the wisdom of the crowd. Yeah, discussion forums are always a fabulous way to bring many different ideas together, and each person can learn from one another, as opposed to trying to go out on your own to just find the information. So I think that's fabulous.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
I mean, that's why my first book was actually shortcuts to the kind of knowledge that I wanted to have that I didn't have, the kind of things I wanted to learn that you can only really learn from talking to a mentor or somebody who's been there and done that. And I suppose that's what Project Management Café is what I do through mentoring. And it's trying to make it easier for people to do their jobs by sharing our own experiences, because even if my experience is not exactly aligned to yours, I might say something that gives you the starting point to go off and turn that into an idea that would work. Or I can tell you what's worked in my environment and you can draw the parallels to what's happening in yours. So I just think that kind of social community, that's what is really important in business, because we have now quite a brain drain of the older generation retiring, and experienced people need ways to pass their information on. All that knowledge sharing is good.
Yeah, no, I think it's fabulous. And actually, talking about knowledge sharing, maybe you can give us maybe a few pointers from your discussion group on the subject of, if I were a PM, or any PM for that matter, how would we say be able to attain credibility in the workplace? What's one of the best ways to do that?
Okay, way to put me on the spot. Credibility, it comes up a lot actually in the people that I mentor, because it's really important to make a good impression at the beginning, isn't it? And the things I think help are being trusted, and that comes with time. I mean, I like to assume trust, but it might be something that you have to build over time. And being reliable. So if you say you're going to do a report every Friday, or that you'll finish whatever it is that you're doing by next Tuesday, then you follow through, and you have to do it, and you follow up on your promises. And I know there's cases where it's not always possible to do that for whatever reason, but then your role becomes, I told you I'd come back to you with a report on Friday. I'm unable to do that because of this. I'm really sorry, and I will get it to you by next week, or I'll tell you when I'm able to do it. So don't just leave somebody hanging. I think that's the being reliable, being consistent, following through on your promises all helps to build up that credibility. And also something I learned really late in my career actually, and I wish I'd done it sooner, is if you have certifications and you're a member of the the PMI or any professional body, or the professional body for business analysis, then use those post-nominal letters that you've earned and put them after your name in your email signature, and make sure that you are selling yourself and showing people what you can do. And that could be as simple as, if you have an industry magazine, I just happen on my desk at the moment to have this IT Now just picked up at random. But if I was in the office, I would want to leave that on my desk so people walking past could see, she's a member of the British Computer Society. She's connected to what's happening in the industry. So there's little things. I mean, virtual working doesn't really work. Nobody cares what I've got on my desk while I'm in my shed. but those kind of things that you can help to show that you've earned your place, and that even if you're very early on in your career, that you have experience and things that you can bring.
That's fantastic.
Does that answer the question?
That answers absolutely fabulously. In fact, you've added on a few extra tips that I didn't even know about. So that's great. That's fabulous. Now, you were talking about some of the courses that you offer. So you do offer an online course on mastering multiple projects. How can one register for the course, first of all? And any quick tips to PMs on how to best manage multiple projects?
Well, you can. There's a free training video actually that you can see. If you go to girlsguide2pm.com/MMP for mastering multiple projects, there's a webinar on critical skills that you need to manage multiple projects, and then all the info about the course is underneath that. So you can read more about it, find out if you think it's a good fit for you. And I include in that sort of the 5-step approach of how to get your life in order when you're managing multiple projects, because that's often the problem. It's just the overwhelm of having to do so much. But in terms of tips, I would say think like a portfolio manager, because if you can bring that kind of attitude and outlook to your work, you'll find it easier to juggle all of the different things that are up in the air. And the other tip, I mean, I could talk about this for ages because it's a topic I really love. And I think it's so important because most people now are managing more than one project. It's just life. Right. We're expected to. The projects are smaller. More people are getting involved in sort of knowledge work projects, which you tend to expect to have to do several at the same time. I mean, there's obviously people out there working in construction and oil and gas and military procurement, things like that, that obviously don't kind of work in the same way. But in IT and digital marketing and legal project management and healthcare, we're expected to have a lot of balls in the air. So I think one of the biggest issues I've had as a project manager trying to do multiple projects is that my managers will not help me prioritize. Or everybody, because I work for 3 different directors, and they'll all say their project is the most important. And you need to use your professional judgment to prioritize those projects so that you're spending your time where it really matters, because you can't always rely on other people to give you the answers, because organizational PMO processes and portfolio management approaches just aren't always as mature as they should be or could be. What do you think about that? Do you think that prioritization is an issue for people?
I think anyone should prioritize, and that comes, and this show is about business analysts and project managers, and I think even BAs should prioritize. PMs most definitely should prioritize. And I had a BA ask me recently, he says, I've been given so many projects. How do I filter this out? And I said, you have to prioritize. You have to go to your PM to find out what percentage of your time has been assigned to what project. And if the PM's not doing that, then the BA or anyone else underneath the PM gets lost. So I think most definitely that's definitely key, no doubt. So talking about prioritization, how can a PM sort of speak about projects in ways that executives will better understand them?
That's a really good question. And I think it's really timely, because we have seen for quite some time, really, and I'm sure people listening will have seen this too, a massive shift away from what a project manager does, and to a certain extent, I think what business analyst does, in terms of both of those disciplines and professions have matured. And now it's less about, okay, I'm going to do this process map. Okay, I'm going to run this workshop about as is and to be, or I'm going to tick boxes and create a schedule and do some risk management on my tracking spreadsheet. And now it's all about value. It's how do we deliver value to our organizations? How do we make a difference? How do we get benefits? And if you think back 10 years ago, the project management literature was conflicted about where benefits fell. And I remember being in a very heated conversation with someone who said, project managers shouldn't get involved in benefits. It happens after the project. You deliver me the thing and somebody else worries about that. That's program manager level. That's the business owner. And that is not the case now. PMBOK 7 talks about benefits management and how, you have to be aware of the why behind the project. And you can tell I feel really strongly about this. And I'm just delighted that the world is coming around to the way of thinking that I've had for 20 years. And I can't even remember what the question was now. Talking to stakeholders. Tie it back to that. Tie it back to what is the value? Use your business acumen. It's what do they care about? Probably shareholder results, money, number of customers, client satisfaction. They probably have very different measures of what success looks like to the iron triangle of what project managers may well be using to measure success at project level. And if you can use stories and talk about what's happening, what a customer experience would look like, then that can be much more meaningful for your senior execs than to say, we're 82% ahead of target, or here's your earned value report for the month, or we've completed this value analysis mapping. And a lot of the jargon that we use to talk between ourselves doesn't mean very much the higher up the organization you go. So tying it all back to what they value and making it about the user experience or the story behind it, the why are we doing this, and how can you show what you're doing is delivering on the why. Right. Does that make sense?
No, that makes absolute sense. And I think that the PM, in order to extend that value from the executives to the team, the PM really needs to be able to set the culture of a team. And I think managing the team is really, it's obviously a crucial skill for any PM. So any advice to PMs on how to be good at negotiating and influencing? Because that's also another major part of managing a team. So you want to be able to negotiate and influence to get your teams to work better together. Any advice on that?
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because I think I don't, if I want my team to work better together, I don't start with negotiating and influencing.
Okay.
I think
Right.
I would start with what's not going well. What do I want to achieve? So the answer might be to do something that involves negotiating something differently, or influencing people to work in a certain way, or creating that kind of supportive working culture. But I think if you're finding that your team is not working in the way that you think they should be, and the question that comes up often when I'm mentoring people is, we're a virtual team. How can I make sure that communication is flowing? Because people were, either it's overwhelming and they can't follow the conversation in Slack, or everything's going through the PM, or there's some other reason why they're working in silos. So that's a common, I want my team to work better type challenge. And if you think through what the problem is, what you want the right thing to be, then you can target your interactions to try to get to that. So in the case of everything's messy in Slack, it might be that the project manager just needs to come out and not get involved in all of those detailed conversations. And if in the case of they're a roadblock because all the conversation is going through them, what can you delegate? How can you empower the team to actually have conversations between themselves? And then you just get the summary at the end of the week. So, and that can be quite difficult, because if you're in a role where as a project manager, you've got that developer background and you've spent loads of time doing it, and you can do the job, and you might even be expected to do some of the tasks, you've got to kind of switch out from your doing hat and your project manager hat. So it's not easy, but getting better at these things is practice, and being brave and not worrying about doing the hard things, and just saying, it's, in the UK we'd say, put on your big girl pants and and just do the thing and have those difficult conversations. And because nobody likes to be told they're not working in the most efficient or team friendly way, but sometimes they might not even realize what they're doing. And it starts with that, doesn't it? Have a conversation about that, and modeling it too. I mean, often, especially with software, I've seen leaders say, oh, we're using this software, but I still want my report on Excel.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But you guys do it like I say, not what I do. So being a good role model for the team is important.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, leaders affect by showing examples of how to be a leader first. I was going to say too, micromanagers. We've all had them. I've had the micromanagers, and you've had the managers who've stepped away and just let you do what you're good at. But yeah, that can be a different story too. But anyway, that's a totally different subject.
But that's sorry. Go on.
No,
I just had another. I was just thinking about what you were saying around influencing, and I think that in the team we often feel like, because we're the leader, we have to do it all ourselves and be that good role model and set the tone and everything. But actually, if you've got people who are better placed to do it, then you can rely on them and use other people in the team. And that works with project communications as well, because I used to work in healthcare, and obviously as a IT professional, I had very little professional influence over doctors, because they are more influenced by their peers. Right. And rightly so, because that's the circle that they move in. Most of the people they see every day, and me turning up from head office saying, now use this software, or isn't it great that we're rolling out these new computers into your office that didn't have a computer before, and I need you to log in. I'm not credible in that situation, because I'm from head office. I don't know them. I'm IT. I'm not a healthcare person. I can't speak the language that is meaningful to them. So on a project where we actually had to do that, we got one particular senior consultant who was tech friendly and who was prepared to lobby for the project on our behalf. Nice. And so he was kind of our secret influencer.
the go-to
And
person.
exactly. And it worked because people listen to people they know, like, and
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it's not me, as long as I get the result I want, which is doctors logging into the software and doing their training, thumbs up for me. The project gets the result. It doesn't matter how we get there, really.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes as the leader of the project, you think that those hard things have to be done by you, but actually they might be better placed if you're if you want to do negotiating and influencing. One of the questions to ask is, who would be best placed to do this? And can I get that person to help us?
Yeah, I think that's vitally important, no doubt. It's funny because I worked in healthcare for a very short period of time, almost a year. And everything you were describing, I experienced it. So I know exactly what you mean. So fantastic. Now you've got this book out, Engaging Stakeholders on Projects, How to Harness People Power. Any recommendations on how to successfully engage stakeholders within the stakeholder lifecycle?
Ooh, well, for those of you watching on YouTube, this is it, and it's full of those ideas. So I think if I had to narrow down 60,000 words into a soundbite for you, Marcus, I'd say we identify them first, because one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my career was not identifying stakeholders, who then got very angry when a project launched and they didn't know about it. Not to be repeated. Very sensible lesson learned there. But then, so you identify the right people constantly as we go through, because it's not a one-off thing. And then think about, what are we engaging them in? Why do we want them? And often we engage them in the deliverables, in that, we need them to do something, or we need them to be something for the project, but we don't engage them in the process. So often I've worked with stakeholders who haven't done project management the way I do it before, or they haven't done it in a formal way, or they've never worked on a project, because, some people manage to get through their lives without having to be involved in projects. And they might be an operational person who needs to come in and support on one particular thing, or they've come to a point in their career where their manager has seconded them to you for whatever reason, because they're ready to take on something new. And I think having that moment where we explain what project is, what my role is, what their role is, what we're trying to do, how it's all going to fit together, what the roadmap is, the big picture, and things like, why do we do risk management? Why do we do change management? Why can't you have every change that you ask for? Those kind of conversations are part of that engagement process as well. And then just treat them nicely. I mean, they're not resources, they're humans. And if we treat them like partners, and as if we were on an equal level to them, because often, I've seen situations where project managers have been very arrogant because the person working in the team has a lower status job in the hierarchical structure of the organization. But actually they're a subject matter expert in the thing that they do, and the value that they bring to the project is their knowledge. And I've seen project managers be very subservient to senior leaders, oh yes, of course we can do that. And actually you can say yes, you can say no to them, they're only humans, but we have to have sort of respectful partnership conversations. And we call it respectful challenge, where you don't have to, sometimes the stakeholder, the sponsor says, do this, and you do it because you can't say no. And I get that. I've been there. You have to do it. But there's still a moment for you to reflect and think, is this the right thing? How can I make the point? He'll overrule me anyway, potentially, but I feel like it's my professional duty to say these things. And if you start out on a kind of footing like that with everybody, then hopefully that helps you build that credibility later on, because you become a trusted voice and not just an admin person who is just going to do whatever they're told.
It's interesting.
I don't know. It's a difficult balance, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I was saying, it's interesting you said he will overrule me. Sometimes it's a she.
Well, maybe there was a particular stakeholder I was thinking there. Just one sponsor that came to mind.
Okay, gotcha. Now, if I know the idea of success of a project would look different to different stakeholders, obviously, and to different executives, but for yourself as a PM, what's your idea of success on a project?
Well, I use the definition of success as defined by the client. So another one of my books is Customer-Centric Project Management, and going through the experience that we document in that book, me and my co-author, really made me think about lessons learned in a very different way, and also what success looks like. And also moving from an insurance job to a healthcare job, because as organizations, they define success quite differently.
Yeah.
And in healthcare, the deadlines seem to be, not on everything, obviously, but on some projects, less important than getting a quality outcome. Whereas insurance, the world of insurance, I was there, before I moved into healthcare, and you would never miss a deadline. We set them in stone and you do it. Whereas the outcome, I don't know, it's just different. It's a different ethos. And I expect even within one particular sector, different organizations would take a different approach. But I try and set a definition of success at the beginning of each project based on what the stakeholders think is important. And I like to think that I'm delivering it on time and on budget, because those are kind of givens, really. That's what I'm paid to do. But then there's probably other things like making sure that this particular thing is included, or that there's work-life balance, for example. I think more projects now are being judged by how they're run as well as what they do, and making sure that the project team's mental health is respected, and there are boundaries, and we treat people nicely, instead of just, we're going to work all hours and be superheroes. Because this idea of project manager as hero, sweeping in to save the day and solve all the problems, actually is really unhealthy. And I'm sure some people in the olden days used to really appreciate and feel good about that role and being that person. And when I've sorted out a problem, I felt a buzz, woohoo, I've managed to fix something. But actually, it's better to be a solid, stable pair of hands, just plodding along and doing everything according to the plan. Yeah. That's less drama that way.
Yeah, I think if also having stable hands comes in handy when you're doing those lessons learned. And if you're, no project is perfect, but say a project fails, what's your advice on how a PM can bounce back from that?
Oh, that's tricky, isn't it? Because it depends on so many things. But I suppose my tip would be, try to think about what you'll do before that happens, and assume that any project could fail at any time. So it's not it's contingency planning for your career. So it's building a strong network around you, having a safety valve where you can go home or go to a trusted colleague and moan about the rubbish day you've had, and you can build up your resilience because you're surrounded by people who've got your back. And then if something bad does happen and your project fails, you're not personally crushed by the experience. And I've often said to people, you're only as good as your last project, because corporate memory is very short. But hopefully over time, you're putting these successes onto your LinkedIn profile, and you're building up a network of people, and you're learning all the time, and you're listening to podcasts like this, and you're feeling that failure is kind of normal and a given, and you haven't really earned your project manager stripes till you've messed it up. And then hopefully you can reflect on what didn't work, salvage what you can, because projects often fail for reasons that are nothing to do with project manager performance. And maybe there's something that can be salvaged, that could be packaged up and used somehow in the organization. Help the team transition. I think for me, helping the team transition into new roles and off to their new projects was quite a cathartic thing, because it meant that I was doing something useful and constructive with my time instead of wallowing.
Yeah. I was going to say, sometimes the opposite happens. I was looking at the director of the first big motion picture movie, Superman. Now, granted, it was many years ago. It was in the late 70s. But he did such a fabulous job and made millions of dollars for the production company. But it was the time was extended on when it got finished. However, despite that, all the actors, all the producers that worked with this particular fellow spoke about him in glowing terms. And when Superman 2 came out, the man was fired. He was not allowed to direct, even though he brought a lot of money to that company. So the opposite could happen. You could be absolutely fabulous at what you do, and for whatever reason,
maybe still not fit for whatever reason. Yeah. So I keep a smiles folder for days like that. Well, I don't think I've ever been fired off a project. Not that springs to mind anyway. But my smiles folder is emails where people have sent me nice things. So they'll say, oh, thanks very much for this, or I've got a nice client message, or a stakeholder has said thank you for something, and I just dump them all into an email folder. And then when I read something and it's negative, or I feel like I've done something wrong, I can at least look back over and say, look, these people appreciated me at the time. And that's, I think, important, because it's often really easy to focus on the negative feedback that we get, or the constructive feedback that actually makes you feel bad, and forget about the fact that you're brilliant at doing so many other things. And building up that kind of bank of, I don't know what to call it really, credit in the bank that you can look back on and draw on when the days are tough.
I'd actually call it my biggest project lesson. I think it's a really good big project lesson. Any last, not last words, but any last advice, any additional advice for your biggest project lesson to anyone else?
I think one of the lessons I learned was, if you're working with people and they're happy, they are great allies for you when times are tough. So to give you an example, we were launching a new piece of software. It was going to affect, I don't know, 8,000 people or something. It was a big deal. And in hospitals, there's not that many times in the year where you can just take out old software and put in new, because it's a 24/7 operation. But you can, mostly in private healthcare, Christmas is quite a quiet time for the UK. So because people don't opt to go into hospital over Christmas. So we decided that we could decommission the old software, switch on the new software, do the data migration over Christmas. So we had lined up people in 35 different locations to do this. And they were all cancelling their Christmas family events, so they could come in on the day after Christmas and test the software and check the data had migrated and all this stuff. And we'd worked a lot to get to this point. We ran our pilot in September, I think, and it was a disaster. We were obviously not ready. And then we had to make the decision, do we go live at Christmas with all the bugs that we can't fix in time, or do we delay? And actually the right thing to do was to delay, but telling everybody who had made their family plans and who'd given up their holidays and their managers had told them they had to come in and over the holiday period, that was quite a big decision to have to make. And knowing that you can't close down hospitals very often, the next available time to close them down was the Easter weekend. So all the people who had kindly volunteered their time to give up Easter holiday, to give up their Christmas holidays, had reorganized all of their family plans for their next big event. And so we now had to go to say to them, we know you gave up Christmas. Well, you can have that back. A bit too late to organize anything now, but we want Easter. You're going to give us Easter. And, and to everyone's credit, they did it, and it was a success. And we had to share that bad news, but actually people went, oh, okay, I get it. I don't want this rubbish product that has got so many bugs. I'm glad you piloted it. Thanks for telling us. We can make this work. And actually that reaction was quite a surprise because I was expecting people to be really angry, and maybe they were, but not to my face. And I think because we'd spent 2 years working with them, we were transparent with communications. We had excellent customer relationships. We really try to do our best to be a good project team to be involved with, and it was clear that we were trying to do our best. And it was also a kind of critical product. If we didn't have it, everybody's lives would be difficult. So we needed this software to be upgraded. And to their credit, I think my lesson there was, the more you engage with people, the more you work with them, the more you go over the top to try to be helpful and transparent and communicate, we won a lot of friends. And I hadn't realized that until the point I needed to call that in. And then suddenly everyone went, well, if you say so, I trust it. I believe that we have to do that. And it wasn't just me. I mean, there was a whole team of senior managers who were running the project. So, we had other people as well. They were hearing it from multiple places. We were credible. And fortunately, all that goodwill we built up paid off. And we didn't get kickback, at least nothing I had to deal with. So I suppose satisfied customers make good allies in tough times would be the lesson. I
like that. Yeah. So make your connections and keep them well beside you, because you never know. That's what some of the best leaders in the world have done. They've got things done by having best skilled people around them, and those connections as well. So in closing words, any way, if anyone wants to get in touch with you from the audience, how can they do so?
Well, I'm on all the usual places. So you can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on Facebook, and you can join us in the Project Management Café Facebook group. That's probably the two. Oh, you can find me on Instagram as well. And I am occasionally on Clubhouse even. So if you want to chat, find my profile on the Clubhouse app, and you can hop into one of my rooms and we can catch up there.
Fantastic. It's been absolutely fabulous having you on the show, Elizabeth. Always a pleasure to listen to you. And I've listened to many of your episodes on YouTube as well, and just absolutely fascinating. I'm constantly taking notes. So,
thank you very much. Well, it's been a pleasure coming on the show today. So thank you for having me.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you. And I want to wish you, I know it's quite late at your time, but still enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. Well, thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
And now a word from our sponsors. The Lewis Institute provides an enterprise project management program that does more than just train PMs. It helps support them from the CEO level on down. These courses help certify project leaders and prepare them to pass the PMP exam. The Business Agility Institute provides Emergence, the Journal of Business Agility. This quarterly publication brings you inspiring stories from the most innovative companies. Use the promo code ANALYST to get a 10% discount on your annual subscription.